Welcome to the Madison Builder Podcast. This is the 2022-23 college basketball prediction show. It's going to be 4 parts. Part 1 is going to be the Power 6, which is the ACC, the Big East, the Big 10, the Big 12, the Pac-12, and the SEC. Part 2 is going to be the next tier, as I like to call it, the high majors, but not necessarily powers. That is the American, the WCC, the MWC, and the Atlantic 10. The third show is going to be the rest of the bunch, which is the mid-majors. And then the fourth show is going to be the first rendition of my bracket projections of the year, as well as my main predictions for the year, like all the big awards and such. So without further ado, here we go. We'll start with the ACC. And my projected standings. In first place in the conference, I have the North Carolina Tar Heels. This is, to me, the team to beat the ACC. It'd be an absolute stunner if they don't win this conference. A lot of their guys are back that were on the runners-up team to the eventual winner, Kansas. You have Armando Bacot, Caleb Love, Leaky Black, RJ Davis, all back. And nobody of significant has left, and you have Hubert Davis in year 2, and he had a fabulous year 1. So let's hope he backs it up in year 2 with another great year. In second place in this conference may come to as a surprise to some people. I'm going with the Virginia Cavaliers. Yes, big bounce back team in the ACC this season. Tony Bennett is amazing. They have a lot of good players in their starting lineup, such as Armand Franklin, Reese Beekman, Kai Clark, Jaden Gardner. No losses of significance for Virginia. They have some freshmen coming in as well. In third in this conference, I have the Duke Blue Devils. Duke is, to me, a team that I think needs some time to gel. You obviously have John Schneider coming in, replacing Coach K, who has retired. They have 4 freshmen in their projected starting lineup, led by Derek Lively II, Mark Mitchell, Tyrese Proctor, and Dariq Whitehead. Some big losses, obviously, Wendell Moore Jr., A.J. Griffin, the number 1 overall pick in the draft, Paolo Banchero, and Mark Williams. And Trevor Keels is actually a loss as well, as he was somebody that came off the bench for them and started on occasion. In fourth in this conference, this could come to a surprise, the Virginia Tech Hokies. I like this Virginia Tech team. I love Mike Young, their coach. They have some starters coming back in Hunter Couture and Darius Maddox and Justin Mitz. Their biggest loss to me is Storm Murphy. They'll miss Storm Murphy, but I think that Young is a good enough coach to get this group together and to rebound from that. In fifth in this conference, I have the Florida State Seminoles. I think they'll be better than they were a year ago. Leonard Hamilton's one of the more underrated coaches in the sport, in my opinion. I like their projected starting lineup. Naheem McCleod, Jalen Warney, Matthew Cleveland. The biggest loss on this team, I guess, would be Anthony Polite in terms of guys that left. In sixth place in this conference, I have the Miami Hurricanes. I like this Canes team. Isaiah Wong is a highly touted player that's going to be featured a lot. I like Jim Larinaga. Very, very solid coach. Seventh, I have the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. I like this Irish team. They're very veteran-laden. Nate Lazuski, Cormac Ryan, Dane Goodwin, and then Marcus Hammond comes over as a transfer. And I like Mike Bray. He's an excellent coach. In eighth place in this conference, I have the Syracuse Orange. Some folks are down on Syracuse. I think they might be a little better than people think. Joseph Girard leads the way there. Jim Boeheim's still around, amazingly enough. Their biggest loss to me was Buddy Boeheim, obviously. Ninth in this conference, I have the Clemson Tigers. Brad Brownwell's obviously a hot seat candidate. They have some veterans in that lineup. PJ Hall, Alex Jimenoway, Chase Hunter. In 10th in this conference, I have the NC State Wolfpack. They're also a very veteran-laden team. Casey Morsell, Greg Grant, and Benzer Dewuna. DJ Burns is a transfer that comes in. In 11th in this conference, I have Louisville. I think they're going to be a little bit better than people expect. Kenny Payne inherits a team that is dealing with a lot of turnover and such. They lose Malik Williams. They lose Noah Locke. They still have Sidney Curry and Roosevelt Wheeler and Jalen Whiters on their team. In 12th, I have the Boston College Eagles. I'm not big on Boston College like others are. The Langford brothers are back. TJ Bickerstaff comes over as a transfer. 13th in this conference, I have the Pittsburgh Panthers. I'm not big on Pitt either. Their coach, Jeff Blashill, might bounce after the season or get fired. They have some transfers coming in, Nelly Cummings, and then they still have John Hughley, William Jeffries, and Jamarius Burton, the grad student. And then in the cellar of this conference, I have the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. Josh Pastner's been there a while now, amazingly enough. Very veteran-laden starting lineup, 2 transfers coming in. All right, awards. Player of the Year, I'm going with Armando Bacon of North Carolina. That's the obvious pick. If it's not him, it's going to be his teammate Caleb Love. This Carolina team's loaded. Bacon's the best player on the team, so it should go to him. Freshman of the Year, Derek Lively, the second from Duke. I think that he's going to be easily the best freshman in this conference and on his own team, obviously. And the Coach of the Year, I'm going to go Tony Bennett because I think Virginia is going to bounce back in a huge way. And he's a coach that tends to get a lot out of his teams. And my bold prediction, I'm going to double down on this Virginia. My bold prediction for the ACC this season is that Virginia is ranked all of the calendar year 2023 for the rest of the season and reestablishes themselves as nationally relevant. And there's going to be people picking them to win the title and all that. So, and if there's odds for the ACC, I would take a snab at Virginia as well if something goes wrong. Carolina, if there's an injury and such. But I love this Virginia team. They would have been my pick if Carolina wasn't bringing everybody back. All right, next up is the Big East. Interesting conference, to say the least. Some turnover and obviously some big changes for some of these teams. This is going to surprise some people. And it's weird saying this about a team that's been nationally relevant for over a decade now, and maybe even 2 decades. And my pick to win this conference is the Villanova Wildcats. Yes, I'm going Villanova over ranked Creighton. We'll get to Creighton in a second, but I like this Villanova team a lot. Justin Moore's coming back from an injury, but the question is, when does he come back? Cam Whitmore is a freshman that is highly touted. Mark Armstrong, same thing. Eric Dixon comes back as well. Some super seniors back. And I think that Kyle Neptune will do a fine job replacing the legend, Jay Wright. And this reminds me a lot of college football when Urban Meyer left Ohio State and Bob Stoops left Oklahoma, and people wrote those programs off from a nationally relevant standpoint because of the losses of their legendary coaches that have had success with those programs before Ryan Day and then Lincoln Riley got to those schools, and those schools still remained nationally relevant under those guys. So I feel the same way about Villanova, and I think that's a very strong and accurate comparison there. In second, I have the Creighton Blue Jays. I'm not as high on Creighton as some other people are. I think they're overhyped. They have some really good players. Arthur Kalama, Ryan Nembhard, Ryan Kalkbrenner, Baylor Schreierman, and they have some freshmen coming in as well. I do think that McDermott's a very solid coach, but I just think that they're too overhyped, and Villanova's still around in this conference. Just saying. And this was a team that finished in the 40s in KenPom last year. In third in this conference, I have the UConn Huskies. I like this UConn team. I love Adama Sanogo. He's the best player in the conference. Andre Jackson is a good player for them as well. They have some transfers coming in, and I think that Danny Hurley's in for some success this season. Fourth in this conference, I have the Xavier Bulldogs. This Xavier team, Xavier Musketeers. What am I saying? I was thinking, I don't know why I thought they were the Bulldogs. They're the Musketeers. That's my mistake. They're very veteran-laden. Two grad students, Solly Baum and Jack Nunge. And then they have Adam Kunkel and Zach Fermantel, as well as two solid players. And then Colby Jones rounds out their starting five. And I think that Sean Miller back with Xavier is going to get this program right back where it needs to be. In fifth in this conference, I have the Providence Friars. I like this Providence team. I think they are a team that's getting overlooked. I think Ed Cooley's an awesome coach. I have some transfers coming in. Clifton Moore, Noah Locke. Ed Crosswell's still there. So I would say that Providence is still going to be in the mix there. In sixth in this conference, I'm going with the Seton Hall Pirates. Yes, I think Seton Hall is going to be better than expected in year one on their new coach that comes over from St. Peter's, Shaheen Holloway. They have some transfers coming in. Kadari Richard and Dre Davis. Trey Jackson's back, and then Jameer Harrison. Alexis Yetna is still there as well. Some freshmen that they got to enroll or get settled and whatnot too. So I think Seton Hall is going to be fine. In seventh of this conference, I have the St. John's Johnnies. St. John's to me is a little overhyped, kind of like Creighton, but this is just a program that I just don't trust. I just don't trust this St. John's program to be among the top half of this conference. Mike Anderson's still with St. John's, and he's not a bad coach. They have some guys coming back, Poach Alexander, Joel Suriano, and Montez Mathis. David Jones comes in as a transfer. I think they're going to be okay, but not as good as people think. Eighth, I have the Marquette, the Golden Eagles. Marquette's interesting. I like Shaka Smart. I think they might be a little better than people think. Tyler Kolek and Olivier Maxence Prosper are back. In ninth, I have the Butler Bulldogs. That's who I was thinking of when I said Xavier Bulldogs. I got them and Butler mixed up. Butler has some transfers coming in. Manny Bates, Jalen Thomas, and Ali. Chuck Harris, Jaden Taylor are back. And Thad Matta's back as well. So this program's going to be better down the road. In 10th, I have the DePaul Blue Demons. Yes, I have DePaul avoiding the cellar this year. They have some transfers coming in. Garal Penn, Caleb Murphy, and Emoja Gibson. A couple seniors back as well. And in the cellar of this conference, I have the Georgetown Hoyas. I think Patrick Ewing's probably in his last season coaching there. I don't think he's going to last into next season. They have a lot of transfers, a lot of turnover within this conference. Player of the year, I'm going to go with Adama Sanogo of UConn. He's easily the best player in this conference. In my mind, very established big man for the Huskies. Freshman of the year, I'm going to go with Ken Whitmer of Villanova. I think that it's going to take some time for him to get settled after the injury, and I think he will have a big impact on this team. And in the coach of the year, I'm going to say Kyle Neptune of Villanova. I think this team's going to be ready to go for conference play, and I think Neptune will show people that he is the guy for this program, like how Ryan Day has showed at Ohio State football. And my bold prediction for the Big East, it's about Villanova, and I'm going to say they win the conference, but they will not be great during non-con play. Their schedule's hard during non-con. They have guys coming back from injury, and Justin Moore, and obviously the freshman Whitmore that we just talked about. But they'll be back for Big East play, and I think that they will be the best team in conference play. Next up is the Big Ten. Standings projections. And first in this conference, I have the Illinois Fighting Illini. I like this Illinois team a lot. I think they have some important players back. I love Brad Underwood. Coleman Hawkins back. Terrence Shannon's a transfer that comes in. Sky Clark, good young freshman coming in. Matthew Myers back with them. And I think they'll just figure out the rest. And I love Underwood. I think he's amazing. In second, I have the Michigan Wolverines. I like this Michigan team a lot. They have some good young freshmen that are coming into the lineup. Hunter Dickinson's back, which is good for them. And I think Juwan Howard has proven himself to be a very solid basketball coach with the Wolverines. In third, I have the Indiana Hoosiers. I'm not big on Indiana like some others are, but I still think they're going to be a solid team in league play. I like Trace Jackson Davis, obviously. They have some veterans coming back as well. And they have a good freshman coming in Jalen Hood Schifino. And Mike Woodson. Mike Woodson was a good NBA coach, but I don't know if he's fit for college. It reminded me of when Alabama hired Avery Johnson. It just didn't work out. That's where I feel like the Mike Woodson thing's going to go eventually. But he does have a good team this year, and I think he's under some pressure to deliver. For the Purdue Boilermakers, Purdue's a perennial contender in this league each and every year. And I think that'll be the case again. They have some guys coming back, Zach Adey, Mason Gillis. They have a good freshman coming in, and Brandon Smith. And I think that Matt Painter is arguably the best coach in this league. In fifth, I have the Michigan State Spartans. I think that Sparty could be better than expected. Joey Hauser's finally going to play for them. Jason Witten's is a grad transfer that comes in. Tyson Walker's a transfer that comes in. But they have a lot of youth on this team that I think needs to be settled in. And obviously, Izzo is a proven coach. Number 6, I have the Ohio State Buckeyes. Ohio State, very solid perennial contender in the Big Ten. They have some nice freshmen coming in. Zed Key's back. Justice Sewing's back. Tanner Holden's a good transfer that comes in. And I'm a big fan of their coach, Chris Holtman. Number 7, I have the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. I think Rutgers is going to be better than expected this season. They have some key players coming back. Caleb McConnell, Clifford Amure, and Paul Malaki. And I really like Steve Pickle, their head coach. He really has turned this program around. And they're going to, I think, be relevant in the state of New Jersey for a while as long as Pickle's there. Number 8, I have the Iowa Hawkeyes. Fran McCaffrey's a perennial coach that gets his team to do better than expected, but I'm a little down on Iowa this year. His son Patrick McCaffrey's still there. Philip Rabaka's still there. Tony Perkins still there. And then they lose Keegan Murray, which is humongous. 9th, I have the Maryland Terrapins. I think that Kevin Willard's going to come in and do a little bit better than expected. Tom Carey's back. Hakeem Hart's back. Tom Scott's back. Patrick Emmelin comes in as a transfer. In 10th in this conference, I have the Wisconsin Badgers. Wisconsin's an interesting team. I'm a little down on Wisconsin. To me, their coach, Greg Gard, is a coach that might be on the hot seat. Stephen Kroll's back, Tyler Wall's back, Chucky Hebron's back, Matt Klesmit, transfer coming in. Number 11 this conference, I have the Northwestern Wildcats. Yes, I think they might be a little better than expected. They have a veteran-laden team, Boo Buie, Chase Audich, Robbie Baron, and then Titus Verhoeven comes in as a transfer. Chris Collins is a hot seat coach, in my opinion, as well. 12, I have the Minnesota Gophers. I'm not big on Minnesota this year. Some transfers coming in. Jamison Battle's back. And Minnesota has Ben Johnson as their coach. He's in year 2. It's crazy to think that it took forever for them to fire Pitino. 13th in this conference, I have the Penn State Nittany Lions. Some people are high on Penn State. I am not. Penn State, to me, is just a program that just has to prove it to me. They were good in the COVID year, but COVID screwed them over, obviously. Jalen Pickett, Dalian Johnson, Seth Lundy are all back. Michael Henn is a transfer that comes in. A lot of youth on this team that they have to sort out. And then 14th, and in the cellar of this conference, I have the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Obviously, their coach, Fred Hoiberg, is in trouble. They have some transfers coming in. Derek Walker's still there. And the awards. So, the player of the year in the Big Ten, I have Trace Jackson Davis of Indiana. I think this is the year that he finally puts it all together and stays healthy. Freshman of the year, I'm going to go Sky Clark of Illinois. I'm big on Illinois, and I think Sky Clark's going to be a spark for them. And the coach of the year, I'm going with Brad Underwood of Illinois. They have some key losses, Kofi Coburn most notably, and I think that he'll keep that group together, and they'll be atop of the Big Ten. And then my bold prediction for this conference is that Chris Collins will be out at Northwestern, sans not finishing in the bottom 3 of the conference. Chris Collins took his team to the tournament one time and has been irrelevant since then, so I think he gone. Next up, the Big 12. A fun conference to talk about, obviously. In first place in this conference, I have the Baylor Bears. Baylor is going for a three-peat in this conference. They have some key players back. LJ Cryer, Caleb Warner, Flo Tamba. Jalen Bridges comes in as a transfer, and Keontae George is a big freshman that they have coming in. And Scott Drew is one hell of a coach. Number 2, I have the Kansas Jayhawks. I still think that Kansas is a national title contender. They're the reigning champions, but I think there could be a little bit of a hangover for them. Veteran-laden team, Jalen Wilson, KJ Adams, Kevin McCullough, Dejon Harris, and obviously Bill Self really silenced the doubters last year, so I got to give it to him. Third in the conference, I have the Texas Longhorns. I'm a big fan of Chris Beard, but I just don't see them cracking the top 3 of this conference. Maybe if they were in the SEC, I would have picked them to be third. Maybe down the road, they'll win some SEC titles. I think the move to the SEC will be good for that basketball program, not really their football program. That's another story for another day. Marcus Carr's back, Timmy Allen's back, Christian Bishop's back. They have a couple freshmen coming in. In fourth place, I have the TCU Horned Frogs. I think TCU's a little overhyped, but I think a lot of it has to do with the conference that they reside in. Mike Miles Jr., Damian Bogg, Chuck O'Bannon Jr., Emmanuel Miller, Eddie Lampkin Jr. is a great starting 5, and I think Jamie Dixon is a good coach. In fifth place, I have the Oklahoma State Cowboys. I think the Cowboys are in for a good season. Caleb Asbury comes in as a transfer. Bryce Thompson, Musa Sasase, Avery Anderson. Very good group there. Down in Oklahoma State. Mike Boynton's a really, really good coach. He's got my respect. Sixth, I have the Oklahoma Sooners. I think Oklahoma's going to be a little better than expected this season. They have a veteran-laden starting 5-2 transfers, Grant Sheffield and Joe Bamsili. Jacob Groves and Jalen Hill are back for them. And I think that Porter Moser's done an excellent job with the Sooners since coming over from Loyola Chicago. Number 7, I have the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Texas Tech, some are high on. I'm not really that high on them. They have some transfers coming in. Hardaza Meek and Devion Harmon. Their coach, Mark Adams, has done a terrific job. But some turnover, I think, could be their bugaboo. 8th in the conference, I have the West Virginia Mountaineers. Talk about turnover. Bob Huggins has a lot of it on his hands. I just don't see this team being in the tournament. I feel like they're going to be on the NIT with Texas Tech and potentially the next team I'm going to talk about. Eric Stevenson and Emmett Matthews Jr. are transfers that come over, and Trey Mitchell too. Kadarian Johnson's back for the Mountaineers. There's just too much turnover on this roster as much as I love Bob Huggins. And they lose some guys like Jalen Bridges that goes in conference to Baylor, amazingly enough, that I think can hurt him. 9th in the conference, I have the Iowa State Cyclones. I like this Iowa State team's potential, but I just don't see it in a loaded conference. They have veterans on their roster, Gabe Cashler, Caleb Grill, transfer in Asuna Mooney. And I like their coach, TJ Oltenberger. I think he's done a nice job. And in the bottom, I have Kansas State Wildcats. Kansas State is not the worst last place team. They might be the best last place team of all the power teams. Jerome Tang takes over for Bruce Weber. They have some transfers coming in. Tyke Green and Keontae Johnson. Marquise Nowell back. Ismail Musad back as well. And now the big awards for the Big 12. Player of the Year, I'm going to go with Jalen Wilson of Kansas. I think he's going to carry that Kansas team. Freshman of the Year, I'm going to go with Keontae George of Baylor. I think he's going to be money for them. The Coach of the Year, Scott Drew, for 3 straight Big 12 titles. And my bold prediction for the Big 12, I'm going to say the conference does not produce a 1 seed. That's pretty bold for the Big 12. You'll see when I get to my bracket projections that the Big 12 will not have a 1 seed. So I'm going to double down on that with my bold prediction for this conference, as good as it is. Next up, the Pac-12. The Pac-12, I think, is very top-heavy, but not deep. In first in the Pac-12, the Arizona Wildcats. Yes, I'm going with a different team than what most people would expect. I really, really love the job that Tommy Lloyd did in year 1. They have some guys coming back in Kirk Carissa, Azuolas Tobias, and Omar Bayo. A couple transfers coming in, Courtney Ramey and Sandra Henderson Jr., who I think will help them. And they have some key losses, obviously. Benedict Mathurin, Troy Terry, and then the center. So I think they'll overcome the losses and finish first in this conference. Second place, I have the UCLA Bruins. This team's absolutely loaded. Amari Baylor and Adam Boner are 2 good freshmen coming in to join Tiger Campbell and Jaime Jaquez Jr. I think Mick Cronin's done a great job with this program. In third in this conference, I have the Oregon Ducks. I like this Oregon team. Very veteran-laden. Will Richardson, Jermaine Cousin-Lord, Quincy Guerriere, and Nefali Dante. Dana Altman's a really good coach. They're in it every year, but they did not make the tournament last year, if I'm not mistaken. In fourth place in this conference, I have the USC Trojans. I like this SC team. Boogie Ellis is back. Drew Peterson's back. Kajani Wright's a freshman that comes in. And I think Andy Enfield's done an amazing job with the Trojans. Fifth, I have the Arizona State Wildcats. Or Sun Devils. I had the wrong Arizona team in my head. Bobby Hurley, to me, is a coach on the hot seat. I can't believe I'm saying that. I really liked Bobby Hurley when they hired him. And he's gone this team to overachieve year in and year out. But last year, they fell flat on their face. Marcus Bagley, Alonzo Gaffney, DJ Horn, all back. Desmond Cambridge Jr. and Warren Washington are two good transfers that come in as well. In sixth in this conference, I have the Washington State Huskies. I like Washington State's potential, but they're still Washington State. And they're on the rise, but I just don't think they're as talented as the top 4 in this league, and even Arizona State to some degree. Jay Mullins is a transfer that comes in. TJ Bama's back. Deshaun Jackson is back as well. And this has a potential to be their best team since the Tony Bennett team that last made the tournament. I like Kyle Smith a lot. He's done a nice job. Number 7, I have the Stanford Cardinal. Stanford's another team that I think is under a ton of pressure. This year, Gerard Haas is a hot seat coach. He's been in Stanford for a while now, amazingly enough. They have some good players coming out. James Keefe, Spencer Jones, Michael O'Connell, Harrison Ingram. Ryan Agarwal's a freshman they're going to rely on as well. 8, I have the Washington Huskies. Mike Hopkins is a coach that's on the hot seat, in my opinion. They have Jamal Bay, Noah Williams, and Keon Brooks coming back. 9, I have the Utah Utes. This Utes team is pretty solid, but they had a down year last year. Craig Smith's just a really good coach. I was tempted to put them as high as 6th, but I just didn't have the balls to do it. Raleigh Worcester, Gabe Madston, Brandon Carlson, Marco Anthony, all back for Utah. Number 10 is the Colorado Buffaloes. Colorado made the tournament a few years ago, but they've kind of not really done that great. Tad Boyle, 13 seasons now, amazingly enough. They have some good transfers coming in. Jalen Gabadon and Ethan Wright. Nikkei Clifford and Tristan Da Silva are back as well. In 11th, I have the Cal Golden Bears. I don't like this Cal team a lot. Veteran laden, that's the case from Joel Brown, Kwani, Sam Ajaliki, and Lars Thiemann are back. And in the cellar, I have the Oregon State Beavers. A ton of turnover on this team. A ton of freshmen coming in. And their downfall from the Elite Eight to rock bottom under Wayne Tinkle last year was stunning. And the only notables coming back are Glenn Taylor Jr. and Dexter Akano. All right, Pac-12 Player of the Year. I'm going to go with Jaime Jaquez of UCLA. There's no other choice. Jaquez is the best player in the conference, although I do not have UCLA winning the conference. Freshman of the Year, Amari Bailey, UCLA. I think he'll have the biggest impact among the freshman players in the Pac-12. And the Coach of the Year, Tommy Lloyd at Arizona, because I think Zona wins the Pac-12 yet again. And last but not least, the SEC. Now, this conference, I think, is very loaded compared to years past. In first place in this conference, I'm going with the Kentucky Wildcats. I think they're going to have a big chip on their shoulder after losing to St. Peter's in the tournament last year. Oscar Tshiebwe reigning National Player of the Year. Jacob Toppin's back. Shavir Wheeler's back. Some good freshmen coming in. I think Cal is under pressure from the fan base standpoint to have some success. Second, I have the Tennessee Volunteers. I think Tennessee is going to be a better team than people may think. Very veteran-laden. I like the job that Rick Barnes has done. Josiah Jordan-James, Santiago Vescovi, and Oliver Nakuma are all back. In third in this conference, I have the Arkansas Razorbacks. I am not as big on Arkansas as others are, but I still think they get a good third-place finish in this conference. Jordan Welsh and Anthony Black, the two key freshmen coming in. Jalen Graham, Mikael Mitchell, two good transfers coming in, and Makai Mitchell, too. And I think that Eric Musselman has a really good roster on his hands. Fourth place, I have the Alabama Crimson Tide. I think Nate Oates also has a good roster to work with as well. A lot of good freshmen coming in, led by Brandon Miller, the good young forward. Javon Quinterly's back, and Charles Badako is back as well. In fifth, I have the Auburn Tigers. Auburn had a good year last year. I think they're going to take a step back, but they'll still be okay. Zip Jasper, Katie Johnson back, Alan Flanagan back, and I think that Bruce Pearl has done a good job over the last few years. Sixth, I have the Texas A&M Aggies. I like this A&M team. They have a lot of potential, veteran-laden as well. Andre Gordon, Tyrese Radford, Henry Coleman III. And Buzz Williams is due to get this team into the tournament. Seventh, I have the Florida Gators. Florida's a little bit of a wild card to me. I think they are just going to be better than expected. Todd Golden comes in and replaces Mike White as Mike White leaves to go to Georgia. I just think Mike White bounced because he knew he was in trouble with the Gators. So he pulled a Shaka Smart on Florida. That's how I looked at it. Kyle Lofton's a good transfer that comes in. Colin Castellan is still there. Riley Kugel's a good freshman that they're going to rely on. Eighth, I have the Ole Miss Rebels. Kermit Davis. There's some hot seat talk around Kermit Davis, which I think is interesting. They have some good transfers coming in. Josh Mballa and Theo Akuba. Matthew Morrell and Jalen Brakefield are back as well as Ty Fagan. Ninth, the LSU Tigers. Oof. Talk about turnover with this basketball team. Matt McMahon comes in as he comes over from Murray State. He has a lot on his hands. Justice Hill and Kendall Coleman come in as transfers. Jalen Reed comes in as a freshman that they are relying on. Mwane Wilkinson's back for them. 10th, I have the Mississippi State Bulldogs. Interesting team for sure. They're a team that I think it just feels like they're NIT bound. Chris Jans comes in as their new coach. Deshaun Davis and Tyler Stevenson are transfers they'll rely on. Shaquille Moore's back, Tulo Smith's back, DJ Jeffries is back. 11, the Missouri Tigers. I don't know about this Missouri team. They're a team that I think is under in a transition phase. Dennis Gates is their coach. Solid grad transfers coming in. DeAndre Golson and Trey Gomelin. 12th in the conference, I have the Georgia Bulldogs. I think they might be a little better with Mike White there now. And Tom Crean out. Jackson Etter's back. Cario Aquino's back. Braylon Bridges is back. Matthew Alexander Moncrief transfer that comes in. 13th, I have the Vanderbilt Commodores. Vandy's just a bottom feeder of this conference like it's been lately. Jerry Stackhouse could end up being a good coach. Liam Robbins comes back. Miles Stu comes back. Jordan Wright back. Tyron Lawrence back. And in the cellar of this conference, the South Carolina Gamecocks. This program, to me, is a team that I think is really far away. Lamont Paris is now their head coach, replacing Frank Martin. This program was in the Final Four 6 years ago, and now they're at the bottom of their conference. They have a good freshman coming in. That they're really big on. That hopes to bring some hope. Gigi Jackson could be the sparkling light for South Carolina that can make them better than expected. Benjamin Bonson's Verdon comes in as a transfer. Josh Gray's still there as well. So, Player of the Year, Oscar Tshiebwe, Kentucky. Duh. There's no other person that I would pick. He won it last year. I expect him to win it again. Freshman of the Year, Nick Smith at Arkansas. I think he's going to come in and have an instant impact for Arkansas, and he's going to be a lottery pick in the draft next year. And the Coach of the Year, John Calipari at Kentucky. Duh. It's Cal. And I think that they're going to win a loaded conference, so credit to Cal. And my bold prediction for the SEC this year, I'm going to say that my bold prediction for the SEC is that they'll produce more than 6 teams in the NCAA tournament. You'll see which 6 when I do my picks. Or which 7, I should say. And then my Pac-12 bold prediction, which I forgot about, is that there will be more than 2 coaching changes come the end of the season in conference. I think that Washington, Mike Hoskins, I think could be out, and I think that the other coach that could be out is Gerard Haas at Stanford. And there's going to be one more. I just don't know if it's going to be Tinkle at Oregon State. Or it could go the other way, where a team overachieves and the coach leaves and goes somewhere else. It could be Bobby Hurley. What if there's a job that's... Or Bobby Hurley could pull the Shaka Smart Mike White move that could just bounce because they know they're in trouble. That's what I'm going to say. Go ballsy and predict that's it. Alrighty, so that's it for part 1 of 4 of the 2022-23 college basketball season predictions show. Part 2 will be the American, the Mountain West, the Atlantic 10, and the WCC. So stay tuned for that.